Okay, we're going to learn how to sew a button. And I've got my helper here. So here's me, here's my helper. Okay, so what you need is you need a piece of scrap material. We're using denim, some old denim so that you can see. So you need a piece of scrap material. You need a button. You will need some kind of scissors. What else?
String.
Or thread. And needles. So let's go ahead and select. We're gonna work on this here. You need a piece of material. And hey, Mandy, and I am going to choose this button. Do you have a button?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you need a piece of material. You need a button. Can you grab us each a needle?
Mm-hmm. Since
you can see better than me. Okay, so you need a needle. And then, let's see, I'm gonna put that here. And then we chose high contrast thread today. Let's go ahead and get about a foot of thread each. So fold it in half. It's about as long as this piece of paper. So one for me and one for you. Once we have the material, then I'll have everything ready. We'll go. So I am super excited. This is a skill that everybody needs to know how to do. And I have some fun activities for you guys to practice this skill. Everybody loses buttons at some point or another. And so this is something that you want to practice on scrap material so that when your button accidentally or mysteriously pops off, you can sew it back on. So, kiddo, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to thread a needle. Now, looking at the thread, sometimes thread will fray. Mm-hmm. Do you know what that means, that word?
Yes.
What does fray mean?
Spread apart.
Spread apart. So a lot of times you'll see people actually pull the thread through their mouth to kind of moisten it. So I'm going to do that right now. Moistening the thread. And then you hold the needle and you are just simply going to thread your needle. So you're going to put that right through the hole in the needle. Let's see if everybody can see. So threading the needle. Did I get it? Oh, look, my eyes. Can you put your hands so everybody can see? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you thread your needle. I need to thread mine. Here, you do yours. I'm going to do mine off camera because I can't see it.
Thread the needle. Pull it through.
Pull it through. So when I sew a button, different people do it different ways. Some people use a single thread. I always double thread mine. One of the trickiest things to do is to tie the knot in the thread. So I'm going to show you two ways. The first way is, so you have your two ends and you want to bring them kind of together. So can you do that on this screen? So you're bringing the ends of your thread together and you grab the thread. I'm going to come down so you can see in the light. So you grab the thread and you're going to go around in a circle and then you're just going to loop the end through and pull it tight. So can you do that on the camera? Go ahead and do that and then pull it. So you make a circle and you put the end kind of through your circle and pull it tight.
Make a circle.
Mm-hmm. Camera. Mm-hmm. Put those ends through and pull it tight.
Ends through and pull it tight.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead and do that. Now, you don't need to pull it tight, but then you're going to go ahead and trim that little edge off. We have super sharp sewing scissors, so be careful. Make sure that mom has given you permission to use your scissors. So cut that off. So that's one way to sew, to make the knot. You make a loop and you pull that end through and then you'll pull it tight. There's an old trick though that is worth practicing, and you kind of moisten your fingers a little bit and you grab the thread and you're going to make a loop, and then you hold it tight like that. See how the upper thread is holding, and I'm going to push it over and then I'm going to not twist, but I'm going like this. Let's see, where's my hand? So I'm going to be pulling my finger through the loop. So moisten, whoops. This one is a good, if you're a sewer, this is worthy of practicing. So you push the end over, and then you're pulling your index finger, your pointer finger, and you're spinning the yarn as it goes through, and that makes a knot at the end of your thread. You still need to cut off that little tiny bit. But so here you have it. You have a needle. The first thing you do is you thread your needle. The second thing you do is you tie a knot in your thread, and there are no prizes. The main thing is that you just have a knot in your thread. The next thing that you're going to do is you have your material. Now, usually a button will be on the button that pops off in our house the most is a button on shorts or a pair of pants. But it could be on a shirt, it could be anywhere. And the material, you'll have two sides of the material, one where the button goes on, and then the other side that'll have a button hole. You put your button where you want it to be. So you're gonna know, let's see if I have see if you can see a dot if I make a dot. Say I want my button to go right there. I'm gonna take my needle and I'm gonna bring the needle up through the material, but not all the way. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the button, I'm gonna put one of the holes, I'm gonna put the needle through one of the holes, and I'm gonna pull that, I'm gonna hold the button and the material at the same time, and I'm gonna slide the thread until the knot is snug against the material. Can you show that in your, so pull it until it's snug. Then if there's different kinds of buttons, there's buttons with 4 holes, there's buttons with 2 holes, this one only has 2. There's fancy buttons. So depending on the kind of button, your goal is to sew your button 3 or 4 times to make it secure. In a 4-hole button, you have 2 choices. So you can either sew from this hole to this hole, and this hole to this hole, so you're making the threads parallel, or you can sew the buttons across in a crisscross fashion. I usually sew my 4-hole buttons crisscross. So you come up through the bottom and then you go diagonally down. Now you want to be careful because that needle is going to pop through the bottom of the material and you don't want to poke your fingers. As long as you're going slow and carefully, you're not going to really hurt yourself. So pull the needle through. Yours is off camera so people can't see. So come down to the material, come down to the paper, and I'll move over. So go ahead and sew that down. And you want to pull it. So when you're sewing something on clothing, you're really looking to keep it nice and tight next to the material. So so you have that diagonal. Now is the tricky part. You have to figure out how to come up through the hole. So you're going to do test pokes. See, this came right here. You're poking with your needle until you find the hole. Oops, that one went through the wrong hole. So I need to move my needle over a little bit until I'm coming up to the other side. And I pull that tight, but not too tight. And then I'm going to go down through this other diagonal, pulling it tight. See how that makes, let me come closer. See how that's making an X? Can you show yours up there? See how yours is making an X? So I've done 1 crisscross on that button so far. So I want to come back and go to my starting hole again, and I'm going to come up through that. I'm testing. Whoops, wrong hole. So I need to move over. Need to come up, see where that's coming through. So I want to come up through that hole, and then I want to go back down that hole. And I'm just going to keep doing that 3 or 4 times. So down. Now I want to, while I'm poking my button on the bottom, I'm looking for the hole. Whoops, wrong one again. So you can just gently move, like crawl your needle over. And then I come up and I go back down. You're doing good, kiddo. Okay, and I'm going to do that 3 times. So I'm going to make 3 X's. Back up through the hole and back down. I hope I left myself enough thread to make a knot. Then I'm going to come up through the bottom 1 last time. And I'm going to go down. And if you can see, I've got my needle hanging from the thread, or hanging from the material. I have my button sewn on. And now I need to tie it off. So what do we know so far? You figure out where you want to sew your button. Okay. You thread your needle. You tie your knot, either a circle or you do the fancy schmancy way where you put the thread around. Is there a pipe cleaner right there? No, there's a pipe cleaner down here. So if I'm going to do the old-fashioned way, I'm going to wrap my thread like this around my finger, and then, let me do it closer, then I'm pushing the thread over, and then when I'm grabbing it, remember I've moistened my finger, I'm grabbing that and it's pulling it underneath to tie the knot. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you? Okay. So that's how you tie the needle on. But now when you're done, you have this button sewn on. You want to be able to tie this thread off without cutting your button. You're going to do another trick. And the trick is that right underneath the X, so you need to figure out where that is. You're going to put the needle under the material like this, where it kind of, you grab a tiny bit of the material, but you're right underneath the needle, or right underneath the button. So see how that is? Can you show? See what I did right there, kiddo? So you grab a tiny bit of the material, but don't pull the needle all the way through. And now the thread that's attached, you're going to wrap around the end. Be careful, but you're going to wrap it around the needle 3 or 4 times and keeping it kind of tight. You see that? Then you're holding the thread down with your thumb while you gently pull the needle through. And you kind of have it do a little dance, but you're holding it down with your thumb as you pull it through. And that knot slides all the way down to the button. And now you've tied a knot right there. Did it work on yours?
Yep.
Good job. So then you just simply cut it off. Be careful with these extra sharp scissors. And there you have it. You have a button. So let me do one more real quick. We'll just practice one more. When did you learn how to sew a button?
A while ago, when I was like 6.
When you were 6, right? You always thought this was really kind of cool stuff. So again, you thread your needle. If you can see it, I have to bring mine up so I can actually see. This is actually tricky. And then you pull your thread so that your ends are even with each other. Ends are even. This is a good practice right here. Just threading a needle, thread a needle, and then practice the old-fashioned one. You wrap the thread around in a circle, and then you push it over and you pull it through and see if you tied a knot. Oop, I did. And a way to practice is then just cut the knot off and then do it again. I learned how to sew a button at a birthday party when I was 8. I still remember the mom teaching me how to sew a button. So I just did it again. I spun it around and I pulled it through. But that's an ugly knot. See, it has a little loop on there. So I am going to cut it off. This is an amazing skill to teach our kids. Fine motor skills are desperately needed. So tying a knot, you put it around your finger. You're pushing the end, you're pushing this part with your thumb, so you're pushing it over, and then you're pulling your index finger through, and it ties a knot. See that? Knot. And then, so let me grab a fun button. Oh, you're gonna try and do a star? I mean a snowflake. So over here, coming up from the bottom, you can just put your needle through and then you put the button through there. This time I'm going to sew a parallel way. It's good to have practice pieces of material. So I'm going to sew down and then I'm going to come up on the other, where you guys look at what Steven's doing. You can get craft buttons at the thrift store, Goodwill, or at a craft store. And most likely, like me, you probably have bags of buttons somewhere. So I'm sewing this on a couple times just so that I can show you. So this is another way to sew a button on. But the real thing that you need to practice, the sewing the button on itself is fun. It's the tying it off on the back. So you want your button to be secure on the material. If you're sewing a button on a pair of pants, you really need to sew it 3 or 4 times so that it stays secure. Because you don't want it just to pop off the first time that you go to button your pants. That's embarrassing. So once you have your button tied on, again, you flip your material over and you're going to just grab a tiny bit of material, remember? So you're going to grab a tiny bit of the material, and then, here, let me do one and then you do it. So okay. Grab a tiny bit, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of holding it kind of taut, which means tight. I'm going to use my thumb to hold it in place, pull that needle through so that the knot is there, and then I'm going to clip it really close. Isn't that clever? And now I have practice. This is really good to do during reading time, during church, or any time that you need to sit still and quiet, but you kind of have the fidgets or something to do on a rainy day, right? So you show them that you know how to tie off that needle as well. And then we're going to wrap it up. So grabbing a little bit of that material, come down, come lower a little bit into the light. There you go. And then wrapping it up. This is one that's we're gonna add, I am creating some activities that you can do with your kids. Go ahead, pull it kind of gently through, kind of pushing it down. Did you knot it?
Yep.
Sweet. So I'm actually creating a double activity for you to do with your kids where you can work on some math skills and sewing. The answers on is buttons. That should be ready later this afternoon or tomorrow, and you're going to be able to find that in the treasure chest. So thank you guys for joining us as we practice this life skill. Let me know what you think. We love doing stuff like this together because it's so important to get these fine motor skills down. They're really important for things like handwriting, but they're also super important if your kids do anything that require fine motor skills, like what? Do you remember? What kind of a person would need?
Surgeon.
Like a surgeon. Kids today are graduating with poor fine motor skills so that they're actually having a hard time finding people that can hold a scalpel well. So this is something worthy of practicing. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. Practice sewing your buttons and drop some pictures below. We would love to see your good work. So if you have some creative buttons, make sure that you show us the back so that we can see how well your knots are coming together, and let us know what you think. Have a great day.